If you remember, Etruscans were the people that lived where Rome was before there was a Rome, and they continued to be very powerful even when Rome was already starting to grow and spread within Italy. Now, the last of these kings was named Tarquin the Proud, or Tarquin Superbus. Was he a good king, William?
No.
No. Do you remember what happened to him? Can you remind the class a little bit?
Let me see.
What happened to Tarquin? Who remembers? Remember those notes. You write to future you. How well were you writing those notes to future you? What happened to Tarquin?
He was overthrown.
Right. Remember his son Sextus went and hurt one of the really powerful, famous, and well-respected women named Lucretia. And after that, Lucretia's husband and Lucius Junius Brutus kicked Tarquin out of the city. Today's story comes with what happens next. Because if you'll remember, I told you that after Tarquin Superbus, Tarquin the Proud, the last king of Rome, was kicked out of the city, he didn't just give up. Tarquin tried to get his throne back over and over and over again. One of these attempts came just 1 year after he was kicked out of the city. Megan, do you remember what year Tarquin the Proud was kicked out of Rome? What year was Tarquin kicked out and the Republic began?
I'm not very sure, but maybe 509.
509. And remember, I'm a nice teacher, Megan, even if it's not in your notes. Look, right here. I gotcha. I know you don't have everything, but yeah, you had it in your notes. 509. The year we're looking at is 508. Remember, it's BCE, so we count down. Just 1 year after. And the events of 508 BCE, with Tarquin the Proud trying to regain his throne, almost destroyed the Roman Republic before the Republic even began. Now, please remember, these early stories of Rome are always going to be a mix of fact and fiction, truth and legend. We didn't discuss it completely, but Rome was taken and destroyed by the Gauls around 386 BCE. And in this destruction, any writing that occurred back in the olden times in the 500s and 600s would have been lost. So these stories we have came from people writing much, much later, like Livy around the year 50, 40, 30, 20, and into the reign of Augustus. So these stories, once again, you have to ask yourself, what is truth? What is legend? And why are they telling the story? What lesson was it trying to teach people in Rome? And this is to remind us what Rome was supposed to be. Now we're learning about Caesar, Pompey, Sulla, Marius, generals that are willing to march on Rome, take the city for themselves, maybe even make themselves emperor. And although these men were great in many ways and wielded great power, you have to ask yourself, was this the Rome that was supposed to be all the way back when they threw out the kings and made it into a republic? After Tarquin was kicked out in 509, he immediately looked for ways to get his throne back. His attempts kept failing. We're going to look at one of these attempts, the most famous of these, which occurred in 508 BCE. So if you'll remember, Tarquin was Etruscan. His heredity was Etruscan. At that time, the most powerful, probably Etruscan city was a city called Clusium. And the powerful king of Clusium was named Lars Porsena. Tarquin went to King Lars Porsena and said, look, we're both Etruscan. I live near you in Rome. What's going to happen? Lars, what if people see that people can just kick kings out and start republics? Is that good for you? And Lars is like, you know what? Tarquin's right. If the people see the Romans can kick out their king and start a republic, what's going to stop the Clusiums from kicking out their king here and starting a republic? And he is Etruscan also. So Lars Porsena decides it makes sense to go and fight to help his fellow Etruscan Tarquin get his throne back in Rome. If not for two legendary heroes, these two names, Horatius Cocles and Gaius Mucius, Rome might have fallen in 508 BCE to the Etruscan King Lars Porsena and Tarquin the Proud. I'll tell you a little bit about the story. I'll then show you some poetry, some pictures, and we'll watch a video as well. So Lars and his army come to Rome, and they arrive at the Tiber River. If you remember from your notes, the Tiber River is the river that goes through Rome. When they get to the river, there's one main bridge that they intend to cross. And if they cross that bridge, their numbers are so great and their army so big that they probably would be able to take Rome and destroy the city or give it back to Tarquin. The story is that one famous Roman said that I will go onto the bridge and I will stop the Etruscan army from crossing while my fellow Romans go below the bridge, knock down the holds, and destroy it and let the bridge fall. They needed to destroy the bridge, but it was a strong, well-built bridge. They needed time. This man's name was Horatius Cocles. Today we call him Horatius at the Bridge after a poem written after him, because this is what he's famous for. Horatius famously got onto the bridge and killed Etruscan after Etruscan after Etruscan until there was a pile of bodies in front of him. The pile was so high that it was hard for the Etruscans to attack him anymore. They started shooting arrows at him. One arrow, then another arrow hit him, and he did not stop fighting. Finally, his fellow Romans were able to take down the bridge supports, and the bridge was about to fall. They yelled to Horatius to get off the bridge and to save himself, because it may be there was still time, but he had been wounded 3 times. He had arrows through his body. Still, he found the effort one more time to get up. He couldn't walk back to land. He didn't have the effort to, and jumped through himself into the Tiber River, which had a pretty strong current at the time, enough to sweep people away. And the story is that people were gazing down at him where he sunk into the river. And then after a few moments, his head showed itself and he was able to get to shore, and the Romans helped him and everybody cheered for him. This story stopped the Etruscans from crossing the bridge and taking Rome. But that's not enough quite yet. I'll take a break for a moment. Who has any questions about Horatius Cocles, Horatius at the bridge? Horatius stopping the Etruscan army wasn't enough, because now the Etruscan army is going to wait and lay siege to the city. Dengmo, do you remember what a siege is? What's a siege?
When it's a battle where you see who runs out of supplies and
Right.
first.
And the Etruscans are going to surround Rome. They're going to stop food, stop water, stop supplies, and they're going to wait for Rome to starve. They're looking for a way to break the siege, to get the Etruscans to leave before they starve to death, run out of water, run out of food. A young man, probably at the time only around 21 years old, named Gaius Mucius, volunteers. He says that if he can kill the king, Lars Porsena, that he thinks that the entire army will want to leave afterwards, that if their great king is gone, they will leave. Gaius proposes that, there's a lot of people in Rome unhappy now. He says he can sneak into the Etruscan camp and pretend to be a deserter. A deserter is someone who leaves one side and goes to the other side or runs away from the army because he doesn't want to fight anymore. He does this and he sneaks into the Etruscan camp. He makes his way up to where the king is, Lars Porsena. There's a problem though. He's never seen King Lars Porsena before. He doesn't know who the king is. He makes a mistake. He takes out his knife, stabs and kills the king's secretary, not the king, one of the king's helpers. Of course, after this, he is captured, and it looks like his mission has failed. But after this, he's questioned. And they say, what are you doing? Who sent you? How many more are there here? Gaius Mucius says, this is just the beginning of the plan. There are many more coming to kill you, and I'm not going to tell you what's happening. And King Lars Porsena says that if he does not tell us, then throw him into the fire. And Gaius Mucius, famous, as you can see in this sculpture, takes his right hand and plunges it into the coals, the steaming, hot coals of the fire, and does it himself, and watches as his right hand burns off. While his hand burns off, the story is that he sits there staring like I am right now. Calm eyes, calm face, no pain, no anger, no smile, as he calmly lets his hand burn off himself. The story is that King Lars Porsena and the Etruscans were so moved by the story of courage that they pulled him out of the flame so as to save him and heal his wound. After this, Gaius Mucius, who has gained their respect, tells them the story, although it's a lie, but they believe him because they cannot believe a person who's shown this much bravery would be untruthful. And he says that he represents the young men of Rome, and that all of the young men of Rome are just as brave as he was, and he just drew like the short straw. He was unlucky and had to go first. But he says there's at least 300 men exactly like him, and they're going to come one after the other, after the other, after the other, until one of them succeeds in killing the king. And the story that Livy tells us is that King Lars is so impressed by his bravery and so worried about this train of assassins that's coming to kill him, that King Lars Porsena is like, maybe it's not worth it to take Rome anymore. And the legendary story tells us that he abandons the siege, the Etruscans go home, and Rome survives. What should a young Roman want before anything else? What's more important than family? More important than personal glory? More important than riches? What are they fighting for first and foremost? What is worth giving their life for, William?
Rome.
Rome and the glory of Rome. That's the first thing. Does it feel like these lessons are still existing in the times of Sulla and Marius and Caesar and Pompey? Does it seem like people are doing things for Rome first? Does it still feel like that, Megan?
No.
No, why not? What seems to have changed? What are you seeing that shows that things have changed in Rome? What are you seeing, Megan?
They're fighting for themselves, like they want to own the city.
Yeah, they're fighting for themselves. They're attacking their own city. Romans fighting Romans, clearly doing things for personal glory that are not going to help Rome. These early stories of Horatius, Cocles, of Gaius Mucius, of Cincinnatus, of the Horatii and Curatii triplet story, these seems to have been forgotten at this point. It seems like Rome has changed. Now, one of the reasons that this story is so famous is that in the 1800s, a really famous poem entitled Horatius at the Bridge was written. It's a long poem. We're not going to read the whole thing, but I thought we would look at one little part of it, my favorite part of the poem. Here it is. This is my favorite part of Horatius at the Bridge by Thomas Babington Macaulay. It was published all the way back in 1842. Alone stood brave Horatius, but constant still in mind. Thrice 30,000 foes before, and broad flood behind. Down with him, cried false Sextus. Remember, Sextus Tarquinius is the son of Tarquin the Proud, and the broad flood behind. Down with him, cried false Sextus, with a smile on pale face. Down yield thee, cried Lars Porsena. Now yield thee to our grace. Remember, Lars Porsena is the enemy king. Round turned he, as not deigning those craven ranks to see. Not spake he to Lars Porsena, to Sextus not spake he. But he saw on Palatinus the white porch of his home, and he spake to the noble river that rolls by the towers of Rome. He didn't yell back to Sextus Tarquinius. He didn't call back to Lars Porsena. Instead, he turned back to the city he loved, turned back to Rome, and saw his home sitting on the Palatine Hill. And instead, he chose to speak to the river Tiber and ask the river for help. O Tiber, Father Tiber, to whom the Romans pray, a Roman's life, a Roman's arm, take thou in charge this day. So he spake, and speaking, sheathed the good sword by his side, and with harness on his back, plunged headlong in the tide. No sound of joy or sorrow was heard from either bank, but friends and foes in dumb surprise, with parted lips and straining eyes, stood gazing where he sank. Because remember, friend and foe, friend and enemy, had been watching his heroism while he held the bridge alone, and the fighting stops while they gaze into the river to see if he emerges. And when above the surges they saw his crest appear, all Rome sent forth a rapturous cry, and even the ranks of Tuscany could scarce forbear to cheer. Tuscany is where the Etruscans were from. So they're saying that not just the Romans, but his enemy, the Etruscans, were cheering deafeningly loud and cheering for this hero who had risked his life, because even the Etruscans appreciated the bravery of Horatius Cocles, Horatius at the Bridge.